Support for this podcast comes from the Utah Office of Tourism, announcing the Four Corners School of Outdoor Education, offering a wide variety of field-based educational hiking and rafting adventures, from day trips to week-long adventures throughout the Colorado Plateau. Nearby attractions include Canyonlands National Park, Hovenweep National Monument, Natural Bridges National Monument, Monument Valley Tribal Park, Cedar Mesa, and the San Juan River. More at fourcornersschool.org.
Blog Talk Radio.
Future that lies ahead, one that will be here sooner than you think, and one that you have an important role to play in bringing about. At the World Transformed, we want to introduce you to what may be the greatest transformation of them all, the one that begins with considering and acting on the almost limitless possibilities that lie ahead, and that ends somewhere beyond the reach of the human imagination. So, when does that astounding future begin? Well, today is the day. My name is Phil Bowermaster, and with me in the virtual studio is my co-blogger, co-futurist, and co-host, Stephen Gordon. Hello, Stephen.
Hey, Phil. How are you doing, man?
I am super fantastic. How are you, my friend?
Oh, doing great, man. I hope you're getting in the holiday spirit. I know that I am. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas around here. Let's put it that way.
Oh, so. I'm really done with that song. One of these days we're going to have a conversation about Christmas songs that you've just, like you hit lifetime, you've heard it enough times, right? But
I think, it's funny you should say that. I was on the way to this Christmas, presentation this evening, and that very song came on the radio for like the fifth time today, and I clicked it off, and my wife looks at me, and she goes, what? And I said, I'm sorry, I've reached my limit on that one.
Heard it enough. There it is. You reach a point. You reach a point. I mean, some you just don't like, right? Like that, the one Roll Out the Holly, that one? I never liked it, right? But some I'm just...
I want a hippopotamus.
I'm in my 50s now, and I'm like, okay.
I know that a lot of people think, the hippopotamus for Christmas song is cute, but for some reason it's like fingernails on a chalkboard to me. I can't. We've
got to bring PJ into this discussion. We're leaving her out. I've got to welcome our Hollywood correspondent. I listed you in the introduction to the show as author and film buff, but so much more than that. You're our movie industry insider, and here to talk about movies tonight. And just start off. Is there any holiday song that you're completely done with at this point in your life?
Oh boy, when you have kids and you have to go to all those concerts every year. It's a long list, and since we're doing lists tonight, I'd rather not start off with holiday songs.
Let's not start off with holiday songs. I agree. Well, I feel like I'm just getting more than my share of holidays this year because let me tell you what we've done. We've been to the Nutcracker. We've been to Breakfast with Santa. We've got coming up. Well, we've been to Disney on Ice. We're going to go ride on the Polar Express over at the Colorado Rail Museum. And I don't know, at least two or three other things that I can't even think of. So I feel like when we get to the end of the holidays, I'm going to be, I don't know. Am I sounding like a grumpy old man? Here was my...
A little bit.
Okay, here was my observation. You know what's good after Disney on Ice? Bourbon on Ice.
Anything
else? I really recommend that.
I was going to say vodka on ice.
Yeah, that would work too. Absolutely. Vodka on Ice is the perfect compliment for Disney on Ice. Well, So how about you, PJ? How are the holidays going for you? Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah to you.
Thank you very much. The holidays are going very well. Very happy. Son is home from college. We're all under one roof. It's all good.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
That's wonderful. Yeah, we got the oldest coming home here in a few days too. So looking forward to that. Well, we got a huge show tonight. and we're going to be talking about big ideas, big movies with big ideas, but we've been a little bit overtaken by events, as Stephen pointed out before the show actually began, with this developments around the movie The Interview that Sony Pictures has under basically threat, what might be described as terrorist threat, pulled. They're not releasing it. What's the latest that you hear from your end of the world, PJ, and what's happening with that? Are we ever going to see it? Will they eventually release it to theaters? What's going on there? Do you know?
Well, they have so many different options available to them right now because it's not just about whether they could re-release it to theaters. There are the options of video on demand. Do they just go ahead and release it to Netflix and DVD? They have all these other markets that they can release it to. So I don't think they'll actually ever bury it. In a weird way, it could make the film an instant cult classic, even if it doesn't get a major release. But you've got two major stars. It wasn't a cheap movie, as things go,
and it could have been a huge flop. Let's face it. I mean, there was no guarantee tied to this movie, right? I mean,
oh no, absolutely not.
It looked like something that was going to be incredibly stupid, and I was going to avoid like the plague. But I'm going to tell you, if they ever have the courage to release it, either in the theater, if it's in the theater, I'm there, and if they release it on Blu-ray, I'm buying 20 copies of that stupid thing.
But here's the thing you have to remember when they were releasing it, though, is that release dates often reflect their feelings about a film. So releasing something on Christmas Day means they feel good about it. It wasn't a tentpole that they were going to release at Thanksgiving, but they're not burying it post-Oscar season either.
Right. So, they had some, reason to think it had some legs, and so. What do you make of it, PJ? What's it say about the future of the industry we love so much, the movie business? Are we going to see more of this kind of thing?
We're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
I wonder.
I would say, Phil, that if companies like Sony are going to allow tariffs to say what they can't show, then what's to keep the tariffs from telling them in the future what they have to produce? I mean, what are we going to see? Like pro-terrorist movies from Sony? I mean,
No,
I don't really think so. But it's I don't know. It's
the principle of the
drives
thing.
me insane that our freedom of speech would be trampled on like this, and these guys would capitulate. It just makes me crazy. But anyway,
I'll tell you, the most interesting thing to me, frankly, is the change in technology that's happening at the studios as we speak. So everybody's avoiding email. They're going back to phones, faxes.
Right.
Nothing. I feel like we've gone into the Wayback Machine. They're actually avoiding anything that can give them any kind of exposure, not just because they haven't fixed the holes in their security yet, which is part of it, but all of Hollywood is freaking out, thinking, oh my God, what have I said in the past? And what might I say in the future? And they're trying to avoid texts. They're avoiding any form of electronic communication beyond voice.
Right.
I hear some of the stars are going back to the old flip phones even. You have to dig those things up on eBay, I guess.
Right.
Wow.
And that way, I think
the 80s. We're back in the 80s.
For obvious reasons. Yeah.
I hope they still use computers for special effects though, because it's really going to suck if we go back to the 80s, where all the technology is concerned. Well, it's interesting. A lot of fear. A lot of people responding to things. Reacting to things, which is never a good thing. But Stephen, I would say if we had time to get into this, I would question how much of it is capitulating to terrorists and how much of it is just protecting themselves from litigation, right? I mean, should anything happen, right? There's this this huge potential.
If they allow it to go forward and then a terrorist attacks the movie theater as they have threatened to do, then would the people in the theater then sue Sony?
Right.
Well, my legal opinion is that Sony would would be in the clear. It's not Sony's fault if a third party does something evil like that. You know, I mean, that's
you're the lawyer.
That is my legal opinion. Yeah.
But there's a difference between a legal opinion and the court of public opinion. And if something happened, while Sony might not have legal responsibility, they would have a sense of responsibility imposed upon them by the public, and it could destroy their company. They're already having issues. I mean,
they're reeling from this.
Yeah, not only are they reeling from the hacks, but they weren't in the best of shape before that.
Right.
And that would just be the nail in their coffin.
And these hacks aren't just. It's not just that their email was compromised. From what I understand, their IT infrastructure has been hollowed out. I mean, it's a mess of almost unbelievable.
They've got nothing.
Proportions. Yeah.
They've got nothing. They have no systems right now.
They can't generate paychecks, is my understanding. Right? I mean, it's a mess.
Oh my God, they're in trouble.
So yeah, they're in a lot of trouble. So anyway, we're not going to resolve that one this evening. I hope things work out for them, and I hope we eventually get to see the movie that we weren't maybe necessarily planning on seeing anyhow.
It may be one of the most successful movies of its time.
Yeah. Well, I will now watch it for sure. I probably wasn't. Yeah, I was going to catch it on Netflix probably at best, but I, like you, Stephen, I will now pay to see it if given an opportunity to do so, just on the principle of the thing, and maybe I don't know, to help Sony out a little bit because they're having such a hard time. It's the holidays after all. All right,
exactly.
we must move on to our topic because we've got a huge topic. PJ, we got this idea a couple weeks ago on Facebook. You mentioned that you were you watching them back to back or like in the same weekend, but within a very short period of time, you were watching both 2001: A Space Odyssey and Interstellar. Is that right? Tell me, what order did you watch them in?
I actually watched 2001 first.
Okay.
My daughter came home from seeing Interstellar with one of her best friends, her movie buddy, and she's like, "Oh my God, what an amazing film. Mom, you have to see it. But we need a ride to go see 2001 in Hollywood. They're having a one-night screening of it, and would you take us over Thanksgiving?" And I thought, well, that's actually a great opportunity to see both films back to back. So on a Friday night, I saw 2001, and on a Sunday, I saw Interstellar. And it was really a pleasure, first of all, to see 2001 again after so many years in a beautiful, big digital print, et cetera. But a really great opportunity to reference the films so closely together.
Right.
It's a great perspective, I think, to have to see both of them back to back. And I mean, there's just a lot of film industry stuff that you can see there. The difference between how visual effects were done, the difference between how the two movies are paced. Just the difference between the two directors as directors. I mean, all that stuff. But on top of that, you've got this kind of, in some ways, common, similar story, and in some ways, very, very different kind of story. So let's just cut to the end here. Which one's better? You get to decide, and then we'll call the show over. Which did you like better of the two of them, having seen both now?
They're so different. I will tell you that while I enjoyed Interstellar, it has a lot of problems, in my personal opinion, as a picky film viewer, being someone in the business.
Right, okay.
While 2001 is such a monument of filmmaking, I could still take 45 minutes out of the cut.
Right.
So neither of them are, for me as a viewer, my personal opinion, neither of them are unflawed films.
Right, okay. Fair enough.
Having said that, I think 2001 makes the bigger impact because everything comes from that. What stunned my daughter, having never seen it before, was, and reminding myself, having watched it again, was how the visual language of science fiction derives from that movie.
Right.
It's the Rosetta Stone of science fiction movies. and
serious.
Interstellar is a different.
I would say it's the Rosetta Stone of serious science fiction movies. I mean, it's much different from say Star Wars.
Well, interesting though. There are shots in Star Wars that come right out of 2001. There are moments where you sort of go, "Oh, that's where they got that design idea," or "Oh, look how that spaceship floats through frame." So you can even look at the less serious films and go, "Huh, interesting." The visual language. There's still pieces, regardless of how serious or not serious the film is, that exist in 2001.
I always thought that that first scene in Star Wars where the Imperial destroyer is flying overhead and it just keeps going and going and going and going, I always felt like that was almost is it a tribute to 2001 or George Lucas right off the bat trying to one-up it, right? But
exactly.
One way or another, I felt like the two movies were talking to each other in that in that sense. Just the idea of you got a black field of space, you've got this well-lighted craft, and back in those days they used models, right? A lot of that stuff definitely originated with 2001, and we hadn't seen it done that way before. It was done differently. Let's talk a little bit about the stories. Let's talk. Stephen, I thought it was interesting that I believe your comment was that 2001 has a worthy successor in Interstellar. Tell us about that perspective. How do you see those two thematically related, or how do you see Interstellar as a successor to 2001?
I don't believe I can comment on it, Phil, without it being spoiler laden. So I'm going to throw that out.
Spoilers. We're doing spoilers tonight. So.
Yeah, we're spoiling it big time. So if you haven't seen either of these movies, then please go see them and then come back.
I'm just going to say right now, aliens were leaving the monoliths. Okay, there. Spoiler. Okay.
Yeah, spoiler.
Okay. Go ahead, Steve.
Absolutely. The first film, 2001, obviously is a contact with a species that is basically transcended. This is post singularity alien intelligence.
Right.
It has makes contact with pre-human Earth, and basically shepherds us into the sentient species that we are, and then once we start taking our first steps into space, then it basically those monoliths start waking up on the moon and elsewhere, and in the subsequent chapters of that story, both in the novels and in the one movie sequel, basically show how the aliens kind of save us from ourselves, and how we enter a millennia of peace, because of what our contact with this transcendent species, and so it's the aliens that save us kind of story. Okay,
right.
Interstellar sort of responds to that. It says, no, it's not going to be the aliens that save us. We're going to have to save ourselves. And even though it's sort of a, in a sense, it's a, the future, our future selves reaching back and pulling our past selves out of the fire. Really, it's still us saving ourselves in Interstellar. And I thought that was a worthy response, and it was very well done and visually gorgeous. And I mean, all sorts of interesting things thrown in, like a robot unlike any we've ever seen in any movie.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you do a robot that is, unlike any you've ever seen before in movies? I mean, they managed it, and it was just something in the black hole and and of course the wormhole, and just so many different things were done so well. I thought. And I heard a scientist review it, and he had some things to say about it that were negative. How the time dilation could never be quite as 1 hour on that planet being like 25 years up in orbit. It can't be that profound. You'd be right on top of the black hole, and it would destroy you if you had time dilation like that. But he also had a lot of kind things to say. He said, the way they present, say, the black hole, visually was incredible and probably closer to the way it would be than we've ever seen in film before. And so I thought it was great. It's certainly worth your time and your movie-going dollars. It's awesome. And
I like the observation. I like the difference that you observed there. I really hadn't thought about that at all. The difference between the aliens lifting us up, and essentially in Interstellar we lift ourselves up, right? Through the wonder of time travel. I like that. I hadn't thought of that. To me, I look at these two movies, and I see both of them dealing with where do we go next, with this kind of profound question of human destiny. What's going to happen to us? What's the next step for us? And there's a sense of urgency in both films. In 2001, the urgency is laid upon us by the aliens. In Interstellar, it's the fact that the Earth is dying, and we've got to find someplace else to be. To me, the difference, the big takeaway, before we get into nitpicky stuff, because I bet we've all got some stuff for either of them, and we can spend time on those if you want to. The big difference between them as movies is that in Interstellar, I don't feel the transcendence that I do in 2001: A Space Odyssey. But in Interstellar, I get choked up in places, It's got heart, right? There's people that you kind of care about and believe in and stuff, which is totally absent in 2001: A Space Odyssey, except for Hal, right? There's a little bit of pathos for Hal there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, right at the end. But, everybody else just kind of leaves you cold. So to me, it's the difference between that actually feeling like you've caught a glimpse of transcendence, and that feeling of this resonates with the human experience. So I kind of like both. I don't feel that you necessarily have to choose one over the other on that basis. But I like both of them for the reasons stated, because one gives you the one thing and the other gives you the other. But I got to thinking earlier. It's easy to throw out a podcast description and say, well, we're going to talk about the big movies, the science fiction movies with the big ideas. And I thought, that's kind of cheap if we don't say, well, what are the big ideas? What are the big mind-blowing ideas? So I'm going to throw some out here, and you guys can respond to these and tell me if this is a fairly good list. This is the list I came up with of big, potentially mind-blowing ideas that sit at the heart of mind-blowing science fiction movies. The first one is that whole question of human destiny. What is the next step for humanity? Then another one is the idea that we are not alone in the universe, that it's not just us. That is, we're so used to it now that we don't think of it in those terms, but when it's dealt with seriously, that is a huge idea and a very shattering kind of idea for everything we think and perceive about our reality. And then just generally that reality is not what we imagine it to be. Movies that deal with that theme tend to be the ones that take us in these very startling, surprising kinds of directions. And then one more that I think is probably worth mentioning is that time can move differently from what we currently experience. That somehow time itself isn't the thing that we think it is, and that things can happen differently in time than they have. So just off the top of my head, that occurred to me. Those are kind of the big ideas. And I started classifying movies according to those ideas. Human destiny, we're not alone in the universe, reality isn't what we imagine it to be, and time can move differently from what we currently experience. And the one thing that had occurred to me is that if that's your list, right, it doesn't have to be your list. You guys probably come up with 5 really good ones I didn't think of, but if that's your list, 2001: A Space Odyssey is on every one of those. Okay, it actually hits each of those in one way or another. Interstellar does pretty well. It's on 3 or 4 of them, but it doesn't hit all 5. So I think just in the sheer scope of what it takes on, in some ways, maybe 2001 comes out ahead. Having said that, I love the ambition of Interstellar and the scope of it. Just the breadth of what it was willing to take on. What do you guys think of my list? Do you like those big ideas, or did I miss any?
I love them. I think the only things I might add would be the stories that show us how we can redefine ourselves and our cultures, that are the way we live is not static. To me, that's a very big idea when you can see the future, and it's different than how you think the future could be. But yeah, I think that's a great list.
Yeah, and to me, I would list that under human destiny. To me, because it can be this big technological change, it can be this big evolutionary step, or it can be just that we change, right, how we see things.
Well, even just like the Roddenberry notion that our culture can be unhitched from racism, sexism, etc. I mean, that's such a huge idea.
Absolutely. That
we can be in a post-war world, a post-conflict world, where everyone is working together. That's to me, one of the most radical ideas in all of science fiction.
It is, but a profound one that really has gotten a hold of a lot of people. And I mean, you can really see the impact that Star Trek has had in the world. You hear people talking about how they went into science because they liked Star Trek. I mean,
exactly.
That vision, that vision really made a difference in the real world. Okay, so with or without that list, let's throw it open. Unless we have more things we want to say about Interstellar in 2001, we can stay on that for a while if you want to, or we can start talking about some other mind-blowing science fiction movies. We still got some time, but we want to nitpick Interstellar a little bit. I didn't mean to take that off the table, because I do have a couple of things about Interstellar before we leave it. But PJ, you said you had some, so I don't want to be the first. You go ahead. What do you got?
You know what? I don't really want to nitpick it either, because I could just get all negative.
Oh, okay. Well.
The bottom line is I did respond in much the way you did. I was touched by it. I loved the big ideas. There were moments, there were moments that I found very exciting to watch. I loved the robots. There were a whole bunch of things I really liked, but there were definitely things where I was having, those moments when you go into movie theaters and there are people screaming at the screen going, "Don't go into the room."
Right.
I had a couple of those at Interstellar where I just sort of went,
Did you know Matt Damon was a psycho? Did you know Matt Damon was a psycho?
I didn't know. So I'm really grateful to my kids not telling me that Matt Damon was going to be a psycho.
Okay.
You know what I loved about that is that Matt Damon was a relatable psycho.
Yes, he was.
You could almost
understand
why
he was an accessible psycho. Yeah.
Yeah, and which makes you examine yourself, which is good. That's just good storytelling right there.
Yeah.
So, it's the stuff where, it's actually the exact same thing happens in 2001, which always makes me laugh. It's I can get into the airlock when there's a vacuum, with no helmet. There are a few of those moments, which, by the way, Kubrick, to his dying day, regretted he did in 2001. He regretted that scene. But there were a few of those where it's like, I'm sorry.
Well,
Matthew McConaughey's dead.
Look, here's the thing. Here's the only one I'm going to say, because I have a small list of them, and they really don't matter that much. But it was so cool, the presentation of how they got into space, and just that whole sequence from the launch to now they're heading into interplanetary space. That whole sequence I just loved it so much that it made me a little irritated. Okay, that after they got through the wormhole. And suddenly we're on other planets in the other galaxy or whatever, you don't need a rocket to get out of that gravity well anymore, right? Suddenly you've got infinite fuel in this little starship that you're in, and you can keep blasting off from planets and going to It's like, well, you needed a whole big rocket to get off Earth, right? What happened that changed that? Well, what happened is suddenly we're in a science fiction movie, and spaceships can take off from planets, and the fact that they lost that thread made me kind of sad, I guess, more than anything else. I was like,
there was a lot of what Hitchcock called refrigerator logic. So you're in the movie and you're watching it and you're on the ride and you leave the theater and the theory was, Hitchcock's like, it's perfectly fine as long as you enjoy the ride. If you get home, open the refrigerator, look in, and go, wait a second. How did they blast off from, that's refrigerator logic. So there was a lot of it going on in Interstellar.
Okay. Well, I will mention only that one, and then I'll leave it alone. Oh, go ahead, Stephen.
I think I'm going to say something we all agree with, that the fact it's courageous filmmaking. We don't see enough of it. We just don't see enough of that. I would say this was a story that came out, the week that this movie launched. There was a scientific paper that had been published on black holes, and it was one of the scientific advisors that to this film was tasked with helping them come up with the visuals for the black hole, and something about simulating the black hole for this film led to a scientific paper, basically a discovery mathematically made, of course, about what some of the nature of a black hole. And so he went back and wrote a paper as a result of what he had discovered while simulating a black hole for this film. So, I thought that was pretty cool. That was a little cross-pollination there.
Art informs life here, huh? That's fantastic.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Love it when stuff like that happens. That's really cool. Okay, anything else? Other nitpicks? Anybody want to nitpick anything in 2001 other than the helmet? Because I feel like we haven't been fair to 2001. I agree on the length, although it never bothered me. The length of it has never bothered me because I expect it, right? I go in and I go, well, I know this thing goes on forever, so.
A lot of people have trouble with the post-transcendent portion of 2001. They say this is just weird. What is this? What is this Baroque room that what's this all about? Well, here's the issue. How do you imagine the unimaginable? And how do you display it? He was doing, Kubrick was doing the best he could do, and I'm gonna give that filmmaker some slack on that, and I thought it was fascinating how he went about it. So anyway, and there's a little of that also in Interstellar at the end. So
I think so. Yeah. You when you're inside the singularity, right? Literally, the singularity in the case of the black hole, or the figurative singularity in 2001: A Space Odyssey. You've just got to lay on enough weird, I think, to help people understand that you're just seeing something beyond. And yeah, I felt like I got there better in 2001, but I loved all that stuff in Interstellar. I don't mean to say that wasn't cool, because that was truly the mind-blowing part, right? When suddenly you go, what is he up against? And you realize it's that bookshelf laid out in time, right? And he's sort of. It's in space, but it's somehow he's seeing time as a visual dimension or something like that is going on. And when he's in the Tesseract there. That's awesome. That's just it's a great visual approximation of something that can't be visualized, right? Because we can't see it with three-dimensional eyes that can't see time anyhow. It's to your point, Stephen, some brave filmmaking, daring to even try to take it on, not to just sort of cheap out somehow, but really try to give us a little bit of that. Pretty darn cool stuff. Okay, cool. We've got about a half an hour left, not quite a half an hour, so we've got all the rest of the big ideas science fiction movies that have ever been made to cover. And I want to say one other thing about this before we start unloading our lists. I think I did this subgenre a disservice in my show notes in the description that I wrote over on Blog Talk Radio and up on worldtransform.com. I said that this subgenre hasn't gotten the attention it deserves. Actually, when you start listing them, there are quite a few big ideas, mind-blowing science fiction movies made over the past decade or so. I don't know that the number of them has gone down. Actually, they don't get the same attention that the big Transformers and things like that do. But there's quite a few of them once you start putting your list together. At least that was my observation. So we'll see if. you two agree. PJ, what do you got? Give us a mind-blowing big idea science fiction movie, and tell us why it should be on our lists.
Well, I think Solaris should be on the list. Solaris is also a worthy 2001 brother, not even child of, but certainly brother of 2001. And in that case, it's a contact film, but it's more about what happens to humans when contact is about holding a mirror to themselves. And is contact, in fact, holding a mirror to oneself?
What you just heard me, if you heard me typing just now, I was just adding Solaris to my We're Not Alone in the Universe list, because I already had it on my Reality is Not What We Imagine It to Be list, and it didn't occur to me. It's also that. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
It is. It's about reality, and it's also that sense of how different an alien intelligence could be.
Right.
And what's interesting is both in Solaris and in 2001, because you were talking about the Baroque bedroom, I always interpreted the Baroque bedroom, and maybe this is because I also read the novelization, and the history of the movie versus the novelization is fascinating, since both Clarke and Kubrick wrote both.
Right.
Though Clarke took sole authorship of the novel, and the two of them took authorship of the screenplay. But they are different. And in the novel, it's quite clear that the aliens are trying to make Bowman as comfortable as possible in something that approximates a human existence.
Right.
So the Baroque room, while quite surreal, is basically them looking in his brain and going, oh, so this should probably work for you, which is very much what Solaris is actually about. The notion that these aliens can come and inhabit the minds, extract the things that you miss most, the pain that you never dealt with, and give it back to you as your new reality.
Right.
Love that.
The aliens in Solaris are kind of like, in a way, I can't think of what it's called, but it's the place where people are trying to get back to in Star Trek Generations, right? Is that what it's called? The one that has Kirk and Picard in it, right? And people are all trying.
Generation.
What's it?
Generation.
Yeah. What's that thing called? The Nexus, right? They're all trying to get into the Nexus, and it's never even suggested that there's any intelligence behind the Nexus in the Star Trek movies, but you know that there is something in Solaris behind it all.
Yes.
And it's the inscrutability of that entity or those entities that makes that movie so profound. Are they indifferent? Are they trying to help? They don't seem to be hostile. Whatever it is. But the profundity of the experiences that they're laying on these people is, it's horrendous, or is it wonderful? Or I'm not even sure. Yeah, I love that movie. I like the original, the Russian. And I like the remake because I could understand the dialogue without having to
write no subtitles
to read the subtitles. But I almost felt like it was more mysterious in the original with the subtitles, and I feel like that.
Oh,
that
but
might
the
be
original is much more mysterious.
Yeah, that might be why 2001 the movie perhaps works better than the book. Which, by the way, I don't know that Arthur C. Clarke would appreciate you referring to that as a novelization. But yeah.
The movie came first in their development process. They actually worked on the screenplay and the novel simultaneously, and the screenplay was completed first, then the novel. And while it wasn't a novelization, he got to explore other ideas that Kubrick felt were not going to play in the movie.
Yes. However, you have thrown it in a bucket with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie, the book. Right? You know what I'm saying?
Somehow, I think Arthur C. Clarke will get over it.
Yeah, he will.
Wherever he is.
Let me just speak on his behalf, and he forgives you. Okay.
He's already over.
Okay, Solaris is a great one. Steve, what do you got? Give us another mind-blowing, big ideas science fiction movie.
How about I list 3 movies and you tell me the mind-blowing idea that I'm thinking about, okay? Moon, Blade Runner, and Her.
Oh, I love all of them.
Wait, there's a common idea that unites
There's
them?
There's a common big idea to those 3 movies.
Oh, I know it. I know it's the.
Yeah,
it's the artificial intelligence
of
the human approximation of artificial intelligence.
Well, yeah, and really the big question behind all that uses that is, what is a person?
Right.
What is a person? In Moon, is a clone a person? Is in Blade Runner, are these replicants people? In Her, this AI, it's the personhood of this AI, and so it's those are all big idea movies to me. I love them, and Blade Runner also gave us probably the most profound and lived-in looking future, and believable future we've ever seen at the time, and maybe even since. Is there any other city in the future kind of movie that doesn't reference Blade Runner? I can't think of any. So
and what's great about that future is it was so palpably real, and it had flying cars. That's what you
yeah, it managed to make flying cars believable, didn't it?
Right,
yeah.
Right. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I got stuck in the middle of my sentence before, PJ. All I was going to say was maybe that was the reason the movie was more mysterious than the book, was because the aliens were more inscrutable in the movie. That was the end of that sentence before we got stuck on the
right.
novelization.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. Now we're back to Blade Runner. Excuse me. Just the mystery of how my brain works here. Yeah, I like that you can kind of triangulate around the questions of personhood and humanity by looking at those 3. I wouldn't have thought of those 3 as having much of anything in common, Stephen, and that's a really good point. We talked extensively about Her. I guess it was earlier this year or right at the end of last year when it was out, precisely because it raised so many of those issues about it's not just the question of is she real, but you then run into this whole question of how much of the experience he's having is real, right? Because if she's real, then it's okay, it's real. But if she's not, but he's still really feeling something, does something really happen?
There's something
big philosophical muddle.
Scary. It's something extremely scary to me about the movie Her, and it's this: even if the AIs love us, they could destroy us. I'm left at the end of that movie thinking, he's just, devastated, and will never recover really. And it's not just him, but you get the feeling it's practically everybody on Earth that has been abandoned by transcendent beings that have just decided that it's just not worth it. We're going to go on. And
right. Well, and then that's
it's
kind of
a truly sad movie to me.
It is. You're right. It is sad. The idea that they could like us and hurt us anyway. It kind of goes back, PJ, to the point you were making before about how different another intelligence might be. Going back to the aliens in Solaris, they might like us fine and be trying to help, right? And their help it's pretty tough love.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
For the people who are on the receiving end of it, we might have artificial intelligences that come online on this planet that make all kinds of interesting decisions about what's in our best interest that we might that we might not agree with. Even not working out, Stephen, is kind of as nicely as it does in Her. I mean, at least in Her, it's all done in a it's not me, it's it's not you, it's me kind of goodbye sort of a way, right? It's a breakup and it's sad, but it's different from they don't come in and try to fix us, I guess is what I'm saying, or anything like that. which potentially could be a lot worse. All right, very good. Well, we're zipping through them here. Those are all great examples. Okay, I'm going to swing it around and talk about one of my favorite themes. And actually, I ended up with so many on this list, and it's the reality is not what we imagine it to be. I think I think that might be the biggest mind-blowing theme of all, right? Because so many movies kind of fall into that category. It's one of the great cinematic tricks, actually, is to say, I'm showing you one thing. No, you've actually been looking at something else all the time. So you can see that in movies that aren't genre science fiction movies at all, that aren't necessarily dealing with big ideas, and they pull that trick on you. But when that becomes the theme of a movie, that's a big idea. And there's this whole, subgenre of we're actually living in some kind of simulation movies that came out in the 90s. The Matrix being the big popular one, the one that really shook the world. But there's also Dark City and The 13th Floor, and maybe Donnie Darko. I'm not. I never really understood it enough to say for sure if that's what it's about. But it raises those questions about what is reality really. Is what we're experiencing really reality? We can't be 100% sure about that. And then you got movies like Solaris, which I think raises those questions. Her, I think, raises that question. 2001 did. To a small extent, I think you get a little bit of that in Interstellar. The movie Inception had that. I think that is maybe that is the final kind of philosophical idea that we all come back to. And it could be that I've taken several different ideas and I've just lumped them together under reality is not what we imagine it to be. But I do feel like that it's that struggle of, am I even getting what the universe is? That question that drives an awful lot of what we consider to be the bigger kind of philosophical type movies. How about that list? Did I leave anything? Did I leave any good ones off there?
Well, I'll throw one out that isn't even science fiction, but to me, it's not only one of my favorite movies of all time, but it really takes it into the philosophical territory, and that's Groundhog Day.
Oh, I almost listed that one. It's fantasy, it's not science fiction, but there you go.
It's fantasy, and I appreciate that, but it really does get to the heart of what is reality, and in a very specific sense, how do our actions determine our reality? As opposed to it being something like The Matrix, where it's, oh, wow, I've been living in The Matrix, and I never knew. Groundhog Day is, it's almost like you take out the technology and it makes it an even more profound statement.
Right.
Because it's about how just being, it can be an altered state of reality.
Absolutely. Well, and in a sense, it falls under one of my other ones, which is that time can move differently from what we currently experience. And that movie, because in real life, one day is followed by another day is followed by another day. In this movie, he just gets the same day over and over and over again, which is kind of the driver, the device that allows for dealing with all the issues that you just mentioned. I think Groundhog Day, oddly enough, is one of the most profound movies ever made. I really
totally agree.
Every time I watch it, I see more in it than I saw before. And
y'all know the filmmaker was Harold Ramis, just a brilliant man. I also love that movie. It's great.
Yeah,
I would have to say that if I were that character, when Groundhog Day rolled around again, I'd go someplace very nice. just to make sure that if it's going to repeat again, I'm someplace I would like to be. Anyway,
Punxsutawney's it for him though by then, right? I mean, he has found his heaven at that point. Yeah, because I mean, what bigger question is there than that one of what kind of person should I be, right?
Yeah.
Who am I related to? What I choose to do every moment of every day of my life, especially if it's the same day over and over again, right? That's an awesome movie. And I like that addition to the list. Stephen, how about you? Any others that you can think of that mess with
the whole Philip K. Dick film, filmography or whatever. Yeah, and that would of course include probably the most famous is Blade Runner, which we've already mentioned. But I mean, there's Total Recall. Minority Report. A lot of in most of these movies that he did, Philip K. Dick suffered from schizophrenia, and the issue of what is real was huge for him, and that was his real life. He was dealing with that in real life, and it obviously shows in his science fiction, and so just brilliant movies. There was one, is it Paycheck? There's another one. That was a great
Ben Affleck,
one.
yeah.
With Ben Affleck, and then there's one that hardly no one has saw, and it was with the actor Lieutenant Dan, Gary Sinise, and that was another Philip K. Dick movie, and there's no way I'm going to be able to recall the title to it, but it was that was a great one that it was sort of passed over. It was a lower budget story turned into a movie there, but again dealt with the issue of what is real. And
anytime you open one of his books, that's what you're going to be dealing with. Whatever else you're going to be dealing with, you're going to hit that one on every page. You're going to hit that when you don't even expect it. And if and whose side am I on? If the person that I think I am is not who I really am, then what am I supposed to be rooting for here? And that was the question in Total Recall. So right. Well, now there's a universal spoiler for all Philip K. Dick books. Okay. I can spoil every Philip K. Dick book for you right now. You ready? None of it happened. Okay. Oh wait, maybe it did. There, that's it. What? That's they all. I mean, you're either you get there at the end or you're there all the way through, right? And you're like, well, I don't know, but I love those books. Okay, well, let's always got a few more minutes. We got a few more minutes. I want to come back to We're Not Alone in the Universe. Okay, this is one that I feel is profound when it gets touched on. It doesn't get touched on very often. 2001 does it. Solaris, PJ, as you pointed out, handles it very well. Contact, I think, is a movie.
Oh yeah.
That touches on that and falls into kind of the mind-blowing successor to 2001: A Space Odyssey in that sense. It also has a lot in common, I think, with Interstellar because it's got the characters you care about and the heart, and it's even got one of the stars from Interstellar in it. Come to think of it, so there's an interesting bridge movie between the two.
Does it choke you guys up in that movie when she says they should have sent a poet? I mean, it gets me every time, and I can't really put my finger on why. It's just, it was like it was beyond her ability to express what she was seeing, and it was
right.
Yeah, that was a beautiful moment in that film, I thought.
Yeah, well, that's a sequence of somebody dealing with, we were talking about the singularity type stuff, talking about, trying to imagine that which can't be imagined, trying to process that which can't be processed. And here it isn't even an artifact of a greater intelligence or any of that kind of thing. It's just the beauty of the universe that has so overwhelmed her in that moment. That's a great scene.
Well, we don't really get to see
I love that movie.
Yeah, we don't really get to see what she's seeing. I think it was not just the beauty of the universe, but I think it was also she was seeing something beyond, maybe something transcendent. And but I always thought that was a profound movie. And it, and it was also it was an interesting story. It's written by Carl Sagan, one of my favorite people, really. Just an author that pretty much you should read everything he writes. Yeah.
Yep.
And I thought it was interesting how he dealt with the issue of atheism versus faith. And of course, he's an atheist. And as a person of faith, I found it was very touching how he dealt with that, and refreshing that it wasn't just slamming people that of faith. And
although it is dealt with somewhat differently in the book than in the movie.
True.
I think that the
movie for a larger audience, I think. But I've read the book too, and it was and I didn't feel like it was a utter slam. And I thought it was well handled.
In both stories, you have this character who finally is asking people to believe her pretty much on faith, which is the
a person without faith saying that, which was pretty great.
Put in that position. It's a interesting turnaround, and it doesn't change any of where she is and what she believes or any of that, but it puts her in an odd position, and I don't know. It puts us all in an interesting position, I guess. How about that idea of not being alone in the universe? Did I miss any others that are good for that?
You have to hit Close Encounters.
Well, it's on my list. I just wanted somebody else to say it, of course. Yes.
I'm sorry, PJ. I completely stepped on you. What did you just say?
You have to say Close Encounters.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say there's
Close
a trilogy.
There's
the trilogy of Close Encounters, E.T., and then the late edition of Super 8. I feel like that is Spielberg's trilogy of encountering aliens. I love those three movies.
Yeah, Super 8 takes us in a very different direction with the aliens, though, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah, it does.
In terms of the power dynamics, if nothing else, between us and them, and some of the other stuff. Close Encounters, not as mind blowing maybe as some of the others. It's almost feel good transcendence in Close Encounters.
It's warm fuzzy suburban transcendence.
Yeah, which is good. We need more of that.
So is E.T. for that matter.
Yeah. I like that kind of stuff. What about any of the rest of these categories? Anybody have other thoughts on human destiny, or anybody got just one to throw out that we haven't talked about yet? Big mind blowing.
We really haven't. We haven't talked about Gravity, and which beautiful filmmaking. You might say, well, the ideas that are dealt with in Gravity aren't quite as profound, perhaps, as 2001: A Space Odyssey. I think there is some depth there, and I think one of the things is what we do to even though we might be alone in the universe, our drive to survive and to carry on, and keep trying. She is quite the hero in that movie, and the person she's trying to save is herself. And you feel for every crisis she goes from crisis to crisis to crisis, and you're exhausted at the end. But it's just beautifully done filmmaking. And I was in you talk about being in the movie theater and people want to scream at the movie screen and stuff like that. There was someone who did in that movie, and for some reason they had the person that was behind me. I had confused the title of the movie with the character, and Gravity, don't you let go of that ship.
That's awesome.
The funniest thing.
That's great.
I swear, that was worth the price of admission for right there. But
you are truly caught up in the moment when you do something like that.
That person was.
That is a testimony to effective filmmaking right there. Well, I love that movie. It's just a great movie. It's a great story. If it's mind blowing, it's that we could really be there soon. That we're almost there.
Yeah.
That world almost exists. And I think maybe the potential even near next steps can be quite profound when presented in such a realistic way. So maybe it gets honorary mention as a mind blowing movie. Well, I can't believe it. We've actually used up all our time. And Stephen, I didn't get to make the case, and I thought this would be a lot of fun to talk about how Star Trek: The Motion Picture and 2010 are also good follow-ups to 2001: A Space Odyssey. And someday we'll have to do a full 90-minute show, the three of us, on Cloud Atlas, which we didn't talk about.
One of my favorite books of all time.
I have not seen the movie, and I will do so. If that's we're going to have a show on that soon. I'll make sure.
Well, if we're going to talk about it, you're going to have to.
No, I got it. Yeah, exactly.
The time is up. I thank you, PJ, for joining us. Let's do it again. Let's talk movies again. We haven't done it. We haven't done it enough lately.
I love it.
fun.
Anytime, gentlemen.
All right. Thanks for being with us, and happy holidays to you. Stephen,
well, Phil,
our music this evening.
You got the music tonight, don't you, Phil?
Our music is something I think you'll recognize. That's all I'm going to say. We will not be
okay.
We will not be on next week, and we'll watch this space. You'll see when the next show is. But until next time, live to see it.
Support for this podcast comes from the Utah Office of Tourism, announcing the Four Corners School of Outdoor Education. Located at 7,100 feet near the base of the Abajo Mountains in Monticello, Utah, the school's Canyon Country Discovery Center campus is an ideal location for your next tour or vacation. They invite you to visit and learn about Utah's unique canyon country through day trips or week-long adventures. More at fourcornerschool.org.
At Les Schwab Tires, we're drivers just like you. We merge, we get stuck in traffic, we go on road trips, and we know what it means to truly rely on your car, which is why we do everything we can to make things right with you and your vehicle. From checking your brakes for free to patching up a flat when you need it. So if that sounds good to you, well, we're right there with you. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters.